Hi, I'm Catherine Ann Branch Itzinga Pelletier. And so if you're watching this video, you're going to hear a story of how I got all those last names. And just going to tell about my life. So on January 31st, 1953, I was born in my grandparents' house. It was in an upstairs bedroom. My grandmother didn't believe in doctors, so that's how my mom wound up without a doctor. And my great grandmother was a midwife. So they were looking for my great grandmother, but they didn't know where she was, whose house she was at. So great panic appeared, and they had to resort to calling a doctor. And had the doctor been 10 minutes later, my mom would have died because she had where the placenta retains. And actually, there was a problem that I had with my sons when I birthed them as well. So it's kind of a generational thing. But when I was born, it was just my grandma and my grandpa in the room. And so when the cord was cut, I was handed directly to my grandpa. And I would have to say we bonded big time. And he's always been significant in my life up until his death when I was 12. But so during that time, my aunt, who was about 13, was outside in the road looking for the doctor. And finally, they got the doctor, and everything worked out all right. Then my parents continued to live with my grandparents. My parents were 20 and 19 when I was born, so they were rather young. I was not a planned child, and so that kind of made things interesting. So probably like my first memory is at my grandparents' house, sneaking into my grandpa's bedroom while he was sleeping and trying to wake him up. I wanted him to get up because I wanted to play. And that's my very first memory is my grandpa getting him. And he was just a lot of fun. He really was. And then when I was around, I would say around 4 years old, my parents moved us up to the Alameda, California area where my dad's family was from. My dad's family was from the San Francisco area. When you do genealogy stuff, that's where you'll find pretty much all the branch side of the family is in San Francisco. But my grandmother had a house in Alameda, and we wound up living in actually it was projects in Alameda. And so there I went to a preschool. Well, this preschool turned out to be quite significant in my life. It was a Catholic preschool, and it was there that I learned about the Lord. And I just started falling in love with him while attending the school. My dad says that there was a nun that really had an interest in me, and apparently she might have been the main influence, but it certainly had an impact in my life. I definitely feel like I can never tell you a time that I wasn't in love with the Lord. I've always had a relationship. I've always had something that was a deep value inside me, that I knew I was loved and that God loved me, and that was that. And so that was a great thing to have to, kind of start out your life is an assurance inside that that the Lord loves you. So from there, I went to, I did attend a St. Mary's, which was a Catholic school, first grade, and I liked it. And then we ended up moving to San Jose. We were there for 3 months, and my parents lost the home. They tried hard, but in the early years, my dad was drinking. He was an alcoholic, emotionally and physically abusive, but loving. He was the one that would play. He was the one that took the time to interact with me, and so in spite of things, I wound up having a good relationship with my dad. He was in and out of our home. He would do some prison time, and so there would be great periods of time in which my dad wasn't around, and my mom was a single parent with 4 children. So it was a very challenging time, and so we made the best of it. And my brother Jack, who's 22 months younger than me, we were like this because we needed to be. We hung on to each other, and we just got through the various trials that would come in when things would get crazy. I had I developed a role early on in my life as a rescuer. I would see my mom get hurt, and I would go in and try and protect her, and then I'd also try and protect my siblings. This is when my dad would be drinking. He would turn violent, and whereas my grandfather, who was also an alcoholic, and my grandfather on my dad's side was an alcoholic, so that runs through our family. But on my dad's side, my dad would get violent, and so then we'd duck and run for cover. And so I used to facilitate the ducking and running for cover. And so I developed just a pattern. And it was in particular towards my mom. I discovered later in my life, as she got ill, that I was back at the place of making sure Mom was okay. And it's okay, being a rescuer, you got to do what you got to do, and that's what the time required. So, all things end up working into your life somehow. You don't understand them, and they're hard. There are hard things that happen, and yet they end up where they come back and they end up giving you strength, and they give you the ability to know that you can make it through it, and that you can be on top of it and not go under. And that was a gift that God gave me, to be able to know what to do in the situation, and it was pretty successful. So I'm here, So anyways, it was a hard life, but I certainly can't tell you that I lived in depression and moaning and groaning. Things have to be good for me. I have to be able to laugh. I have things that I think things all the time that keep me going. They make me laugh, and so it's important to me to be able to laugh at things. So anyways, In 1960, we moved back to LA and we moved in with my grandparents again. We lived there for about, it was at least a school, 6 months or so. And that was kind of a hot time because my grandma and my dad would really get into wars. They didn't get along during those years, and they, best of friends. They're best of, they were best of friends before she died. But, during those younger years when my dad was drinking, it was quite volatile. So, anyways, my mom and the three of us kids, because my sister hadn't been born yet, my youngest one, moved to a little house in LA, and I went to a school called Glassell Park. I hated that school. I really did. I hated it. And my aunt also attended that school, which I didn't realize. She too had lived in the house that we were living in. It was my grandmother's house. And so it was interesting that my aunt Ralphie is 13 years older than me. So she was around when I was born, and I lived with her for, those first 3-4 years when we first lived there. And then, later on, I find out we went to the same school, and we just have had a life that has intertwined and throughout the years. So, anyways, I just begged my mom to get me back into Catholic school because I hated being in public school. The school I was in was predominantly Latino. So, I was the white bread there and the target. And so I got picked on in that school, and that was part of why I wanted out of there. And so then my mom finally got us into a Catholic school, our local one, and it was called St. Bernard's. And I went in there in 5th grade, and I was happy as a lark from there to 8th grade when it just it goes from 1st to 8th. But I was able to start in the 5th grade, and it was really a very pleasant experience. And I made good friends there, and we all went to high school together. I then transferred into Holy Family High, and it was a girls' Catholic high school. We had 400 in the school. There were 75 in my graduating class. And that's really unique for Los Angeles to be able to have only 75 in your graduating class. And so our class, we have class reunions still. And yes, I'm old enough to attend. I can go to them. Yeah. So we still keep in touch. Our class, we're a close class. The classes that are underneath us and ahead of us don't get together like we do. And so we're really aware that we're very unique and just real, kind to each other. And it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun to get together at those reunions. I also had I was involved in teen club when I was a teenager. The local priest, oh, this is funny. The local priest, he comes to me one day and he says, "Cathy, I want you to come to the CCD classes." And that's a class where kids that are, not in are say public school and haven't had catechism or well, it's a form of catechism is actually what it is, learning the Catholic doctrines and stuff. And so, his name was Father Satoris, and he says, "Cathy, I want you to start attending the CCD classes." And I was like, "No way." not happening. And he says, I need you. He goes, I need someone of your age to be with these kids, to be able to speak, so that it's relevant to them. And I went, oh, all right, I'll do it. So I started doing that, and then I also got involved. I was probably one of the main people in our teen club, and we put on a play and did all that, and it was fun. I sprained my ankle just before showtime, so that wasn't fun. It made an impact on my great performance, I'm sure. And I had a lot of fun in high school. I joined clubs. I had really good friends. And I was poor. I didn't have enough money. But my senior year, I was able to work babysitting. And I did it 5 days a week from 5 o'clock p.m. till 2:30 in the morning. I used to just go to bed at the house, and they'd wake me up and take me home. And I made $25 a week. Oh, all right, be grateful for what you get. And so I did that job, and it gave me pocket money, and it was so awesome because I could go out and buy my school uniforms the way I wanted it, because we had some, it wasn't exactly those typical plaid uniforms. It was a certain number of pleats and stuff like that, and the blouse. So anyways, I was able to buy my clothes, and it was really cool. I was really excited about that. And then I did go to a community college right after. I went to Pasadena City College. Basically only attend there one semester full time. And the problem was, coming from a Catholic school into the public system, there's a whole lot of difference between education. And I felt like I was in kindergarten when I went to the college. I was just like, are you kidding me? The things that I had to do in order to get an A in my other classes in high school, I was getting A's just doing basic stuff, and I'm like, what? So I obviously kind of went on an academic vacation and didn't really work on it. And I begged my mom to let me out, let me go to work. I just don't want to do this. I never was a big school person. I believe in education and that, but I just didn't care to go to school. And that's just the way it is. It's too bad, because I have a good brain that, I really should have gone to a 4-year college immediately out of high school. That would have given me the challenge I needed. But I didn't feel a commitment to any particular field. That was my problem. If I had a passion for a particular field or that, I would have then pursued it. But I didn't have a passion. So I ended up going to work doing computers, and I worked on mainframes. So this would be like, those really big boxes and stuff. And, these rooms with, huge machines. And that's what I worked with. And eventually, I got to know the difference between a hardware and a software problem, and would be able to at least call the technicians for assistance. And not very often could I fix it, but, to decipher the difference of the problem was rather good, It's intelligent. So I did that particular job for 5 years, and I really, Really enjoyed it. I was a computer operator primarily, and so basically I just entered orders in and did product maintenance where you know, update the inventory in the warehouse and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that job. And then next one I went to, I ended up creating an entire new filing system. I created forms for them. It was a Jewish company. I only worked there a year, but it was fun. They were teaching me Yiddish, of course, not the probably everyday Yiddish. They, you know, my boss was a crazy guy. It was fun, and so I learned some skills. Yes, and then I forgot that in 1975. I guess 1974, I met John Itzinga, and that's who became my first husband. And we met at an apartment. I was engaged to another guy, and he met John and introduced me to John, and then started being like best buds with this guy. And so then I think John was going to be in our wedding and everything. I don't remember. And but I knew that I had said yes to this guy that I was engaged to just because he harassed me. He kept bringing over diamond rings, you know. I mean, it wasn't just once. It was a couple of times he brings over a diamond ring to me, and a little hard to kind of keep saying no. So I just went, okay, yes. And then he ends up picking out this apartment for us to move into. Well, I didn't even have a chance to pick the apartment. So, you know, what happened, happened. So there I end up meeting John, and John and I connect, and there's the story. The story where John and I actually connected was he had been out riding a motorcycle on his work yard, and he hit a fence and he tore a hole in his knee. And so he was home doctoring his knee, and I went over to his apartment just to say hey, you know, just say hi. And so he was working on his knee, and I could see that it was a big hole. And I'm like, you need to go to the doctor. And he's, no, yeah, you know, he's a tough guy. John's always a tough guy. So he says, no, no, no. I said, you need to go. So I told him, and I took him to the doctors, the hospital. So we go to the ER, and while we were in the ER, I was really fascinated with the whole situation. They asked me to get my hair out of the way because I was a little involved. So that was when John and I actually first kind of clicked. And so we got him home, and then he had to, you know, take care of his injury. But that's actually how, you know, kind of John and I started. And then, you know, we just realized that there was something there. And so I had to break up with the other guy. And then John and I really got engaged pretty quickly. We started dating May 17th, 1974. And he asked me to marry him like July 20th, something like that. So we were pretty fast on the let's get married thing. But we decided to wait until the first anniversary of our first date. So we got married the next year on May 17th. We had a beautiful wedding, absolutely gorgeous. It couldn't have been more perfect. It was, I think everything a bride would dream of for herself. And except I didn't have a dress I really liked. I just bought a dress to get by because I thought, it's only one day. Let's just get a dress and make it work and get by with it. That was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I really should have gotten a dress I really liked, because that did kind of color things for me, because I felt like that wasn't the dress that I really liked. But yet, the day itself and everything was just wonderful. And then eventually, John and I, we moved into an apartment and we lived there, and then we ended up buying a condo in San Dimas, California, which is, south of LA. So we bought this condo, and it was really, really a nice place. It really was. And then we sold it and we moved to Washington State, and we bought a dairy farm. So I grew up in LA. We're talking cement. We're talking no gravel everywhere. We're talking, walking barefoot outside all the time. That's what I did. I walked barefoot quite a bit. And moved to Washington State. Walking barefoot on the gravel is pretty challenging. Now, I can do it. I can do it. But, it's not as easy as cement. So, but I moved up, didn't know a cow from a bull. I really did not. And I used to always walk on the farm going like this, trying to figure out, is a cow or a bull? Like, I couldn't tell. But by the time I left the farm, oh man, I could just look at their head and bam, get out of my way. I'd certainly changed from the first few years where I was just shaking and timid and stuff. I did help a bit on the farm. I did quite a bit in Dairy Wives. Dairy Wives was an organization that was meant to inform the community of the positive aspects, I can't think of the word, of dairy products. And so we did a lot of promotion. We would go in schools and do butter demonstrations, and we would have a dairy princess, and we'd bring her with us, and she'd have her tiara on with the banner so the kids could all ooh and ah. And it was kind of cute, seeing the kids. And then another fun thing is when we'd have a dairy where the kids would come from a school to the dairy farm. It was always funny when they would write their thank you notes, and they would say, and we really like the ones that were doing the piggyback ride. And so it was pretty funny, just, knowing the innocence of the kids, and it was just cute. But we enjoyed having, dairy farm tours, and I did enjoy going out and doing the demos. And we did them in the malls too. We'd do it in the mall. My girlfriend and I, we went and did a demo at the mall. She dressed up as the cow. I refused. I would not do it. I would not get in that cow thing. But she got into the cow thing, and we just, we just had so much fun. Yes. Whenever I get together with my friends, it is definitely a fun time. And so that was my girlfriend Sharon, and so we did our dairy years together, Sharon and I, and they were quite profound. They were very significant in my life. The dairy years, and I was on the farm from 78 until 84. And there is so much you can learn from animal life. There's so much you can learn from agriculture that I had no idea about prior to living on a farm. It is the cycle of life that really was amazing to me, being on the farm. The plant life, the agriculture, when they did the planting for spring and that, we'd plant barley, plant corn, plant peas. But somehow it developed a significance in my life. These different agricultural things, it made me feel like we were working together somehow, the land and me as as a person. And it really, I felt a connection with the farm, with the whole land and dairying thing that I would have, that surprised me. I didn't know, and it was really significant for me. I really felt like I learned so much, and I loved it. I absolutely loved farming, which here I am, an LA girl, definitely an LA girl. And the farming thing, just, I really took it to it like a duck to water. I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the lifestyle, fell in love with the people. I just enjoyed this part of life. And I was surprised when John got involved. He got involved in a couple of affairs, and it made marriage a little difficult. And so eventually he left me for another woman, which he's now married. And but that whole process was extremely, extremely traumatic. He was the center of my universe. He was everything to me. And and it was a suddenly, we didn't have a deterioration process. I discovered them, and then it busted open. But prior to that, there hadn't been fighting and stuff like that. The things that you normally see in deterioration of a marriage, you didn't see in this. It was a sudden death, and it was quite powerful for me. Did a lot of crying, a whole bunch of it, and it hurt my sons. Clint was just turned 4, and Casey just turned 2, so they were pretty young, and I was really concerned for them. And I should probably tell you about Clint. Clint was born in 1979, and he's my first baby. And it was the best thing that ever happened, ever. And when during the night when he was little, and he'd start whimpering, and you knew he was going to get up, and I would lay in bed going, no, go to sleep, I don't want you to get up, no. And so, I'd wait until I heard the wail, and there it'd come, and so I have to get up. I go and I get him. As soon as I have him in my arms, I'm like, oh, why did I wait so long? he's so cute. He's so precious. Oh, I'd be mad at myself because I waited because I just loved holding him. And then I used to hold him and sing to him. And I used to sing, all right, I'm not like singing, all right, because it's really bad. But I'll tell you the words. It was, it's hard to not say it without singing it. It's, Clinton James, your mama loves you, Clinton James. So I used to sit there and hold him and just sing that to him again and again and again, just because he was so adorable, just adorable. And then Casey, he was our surprise baby. We got him in September 7th, 1981. And with Casey, I had this thing about I should want a girl because I have a boy, but I should want a girl. But I had a bad relationship with my mom, and my mom had a bad relationship with her mom, so I didn't want a girl. I thought if I just don't have a girl, then I don't have to worry about having a bad relationship with my daughter, because it seemed to be the track record for my family, and I was like, I don't want to play that game. So I used to wish when I was a child, or I used to talk to God, and I used to say, now I want to be the only girl in the house, okay? So let's just make sure that there's no daughters involved, that I'm just the only girl. So what ended up happening is, so with Casey, I'm struggling with, do I want a girl or not? Do I want a girl or not? And then when he was born and I saw his equipment, I was like, yes, I got a boy. And I was so excited that, I got another son. And Casey's been just a joy too. He's definitely a different child than Clint, and but still so much fun. Both of them I couldn't be more proud of. And it was hard during our single years. Our single years were really rough. We had moved down to Arizona. I had no family up here in Vancouver, Washington, where the dairy farm was. There was no family at all on my side. John had a cousin in his family who really, Wayne and Betty Itzinga is their name. They really, really tried hard to help us save our marriage. And there used to be a place that I used to go for a respite. I'd go and sit at their house and just soak up love. I'd just sit there and just sit there. And the boys would play with Greg, who was about 9 years old at the time, their son. And Greg was awesome with the boys. So the boys would be distracted, and I could just sit and just soak in the love that was in that home. And then I'd be able to go home again with my boys and be at peace, feel a little more confident that I could do it. And I just got so much whenever I went to Wayne and Betty's. And it really helped me during those hard years that hard time when John had first left. It was pretty rough. So, but eventually, I knew we had a farm, that John would be moving back onto the property with his then girlfriend, and it was going to be more than I could handle. So, plus I had no family up here. So I made a decision to move the boys and I down to Arizona, where my youngest sister Diane was going to college. I didn't want to go back to LA. I was promised free housing free babysitting, all that. But I didn't want to go back to LA. I just wanted my kids to grow up in a different environment. I did love my years in LA. I felt like we had the best of everything. We could go to the mountains, to the desert, to the beach within 2 hours. And so I really did enjoy LA, but I was good with, making the move to Washington State. But then I made a decision to move to Arizona State. So I moved to Arizona. I moved in with my sister and another roommate. We rented a house, 3-bedroom house with a swimming pool, 25,000-gallon pool, and a diving board. Yeah, it was pretty special. And so we moved into that house and lived there for a year. And, I'm basically starting my adjustment to single parenting, to a whole new lifestyle. Going back to work, I hadn't been working for about 7 years. I went to work at Nordstrom's, and then I got pregnant with Clint. So I was at Nordstrom's for about 9 months. So that was the only job I had in Washington since I left California. So then when I moved to Arizona, my work history didn't look that great because I hadn't worked in 7 years. And so the first job I had, I really hated. And then the second job, I did really good. And I was applying for promotions, and I was told to keep applying because I was going to be getting one. So that job I really enjoyed. Basically, it was data entry. And I'm telling you, these fingers can do 10 key like nobody's business. I'm self-taught. I don't do it according to the way they would teach you, but I could smoke anyone. You give me a 10 key, I'm good. I'll blow you out of the water. So I really, to me, it's a game. It was just fun, just going for it. On 10 key, I just loved it. On alpha, like on the keyboard, I stink. I really stink. But give me numbers, I'm happy. So, anyways, in Arizona, the Lord did a lot of healing in me there. I remember I moved down there thinking, the Lord, a lot of people, when they get sick, they go to the desert. And I was thinking about that up here in Washington, going, yeah, and I should go to the desert and I should go get healed. And I remembered, plus Jesus lived in the desert. And I thought, I should go and live in the desert. And so that was, part of the motivating factor, as well as my sister, of going down to Arizona. I fell in love with it. I absolutely loved Arizona. When I got my second job there, I loved that job. I excelled in it, and I had a home church. I attended a home group. I very much was connected in Arizona. It felt like I had family, even beyond my sister, because of the church home groups I attended in that. And financially, it was the worst experience ever. And I call it was the worst of times, it was the best of times. Because in that, God showed up. And I ended up learning so much about the Lord during those years because of the great hardship we were under. The boys, adjusting to a new life, and I'm trying to make sure they're okay. And, you know, our finances not being with that. I mean, I literally would calculate my gas to a church trip, and it would be, if they had like a special speaker or something, that it would be difficult for me to be able to go because of my gas situation. I had some incredible miracles that happened in that. One of them was, there was this speaker and he was talking about tithing, and I hardly had any money, you know. I had like change. I had a bunch of pennies. I'd actually stolen them from the kids' bank. All these pennies. I had all these pennies, and I think it amounted to $2.50. I'm not sure. And I think I was planning on getting gas with it. You know, I'm pretty sure, because I wouldn't just take money just to take money. I mean, there would be a reason. There'd be a reason to rob your children. So, I went and I had that $2.50 in pennies. And I gave it in the offering. I'm telling you, there were tears coming down because I didn't know how I was going to get home. I was crying hard. I mean, just, oh my God, I'm giving my life away. You know, and I put it in the tithing basket. And then I was sitting next to a friend, and the tithing basket hadn't even gone by, and she put a check in my hand. And I was like, this is crazy. I haven't even given it, and I've been given. And then I sat there and I thought, what if it's $5? Sweet. Maybe it's 10. Maybe it's $10. Oh, so cool. Maybe I got $10. And so then I just sat there and I was just like, yeah, maybe it's 10. And I was really excited. I get out and I open the check, and it was like $100. $100. And I knew this woman, that she was a single parent as well. And I panicked. And I said, I've got to give her this check back. I know she can't give this. There's no reason that this can't happen. This can't be. I got to give this check back to her. And then I felt like the Lord said, stop. Did you ask her for the check? I said, no. Who did? I said, well, you did. So who's responsible to pay her back? He said, I am. I said, but Lord, $100 is too much. He said, yeah, but she wanted to give it. So I let her have it. And he said, if you give that check back, you steal a blessing from her. Don't steal it from her. So I spent the $100. It was the first thing I did. I got gas and a Pepsi. Yep, gas and a Pepsi. Always had to have a Diet Pepsi for a lot of years. So I was pretty darn excited. Yes, indeedy. And there were so many miracles like that happened during those years down in Arizona. I mean, I really can go on and tell you story after story of miracles that God did during those years. And so in 1986, I felt the Lord tell me that I needed to move back to Vancouver, Washington, so that I could work on reconciliation with John. I had started praying for our marriage to be healed. So I did that for 5 years. I didn't date. I just focused on trying to reconcile our marriage. I did it I acted married while I was in Arizona. I kept my wedding ring on and just handled myself like normal. And I did not attend single meetings at church, for the singles. I didn't attend stuff like that. I stayed away from that. Because I felt like the Lord had told me to work on healing this marriage. I wasn't real excited about it, I'll tell you that, but, but I felt like I need to do what God wants, and that's that. So when I felt like the Lord said to move back to Vancouver and I had no family here, that was really hard. And I was extremely happy in Arizona, like I said, with my job, my church, my home groups, I had a good life. I loved it. And it was hard to come back to Vancouver because I knew that the farming community does have a tendency to do this. And so I didn't want to come back and get involved in this stuff. But when God says go, you go. So he gave me the scriptures in Numbers, I think it's 11, where it talks about the land of milk and honey. And the Lord was telling me to go back to the land of milk and honey. And he also talked about how no weapon formed against me would prosper. And the Lord really did protect me coming back here. I was worried about running into the other woman. And I didn't want to be back here because of that. But it worked out where God always protected me regarding that. And when I would end up seeing her, the Lord would give me a warning. I knew she had no warning, but God would give me a warning that I was about to see her, and it was quite phenomenal. I really appreciated that the Lord gave me a bit of a heads up. And but it didn't happen often. It was not as I had feared at all. So so anyways, I moved back, and I started seeing my friends that, my good friends that I had left behind. And what was interesting was my two best friends, they both, at